Hello everyone and welcome to the Wacko Prophet podcast. I am the Wacko Prophet and my name is Imran. Today I will be talking about the YouTube Red and Netflix series Cobra Kai Season 1 Episode 9, the penultimate episode, named Different But Same. Now, if you have subscribed to the Wacko Prophet podcast, you know that I have been giving my review and impressions, my amateur review and impressions on every single episode of Cobra Kai. Please go back and check it out if you want to. I've talked very briefly about the good and the bad and some important stuff about every single episode of that particular series, and I've also made some predictions. As I said, we are on the 9th episode, the one before the last this week. So before we get into it, I will start with a bit of a recap on what has happened so far. As of the end of episode 8, Cobra Kai is training for the All Valley tournament, which is possibly happening in episode 10. Johnny Lawrence, who is the sensei of Cobra Kai, was seen trying to clean up his act in episode 8, only to be disrupted by Daniel's cousin, who is, for reasons we have explored already, trying to torch his car along with a couple of shady bikers. Also, Miguel conveniently turns up at the LaRussos when they're having their dinner with Robbie, because Miguel is, as we know, dating Samantha, or Sam, who is Daniel's elder daughter, and comes to the LaRusso household with the hopes of speaking to her father and communicating the fact that Miguel is dating his daughter, but he chooses not to when he very conveniently, sees the LaRussos having dinner with Robbie, and so he up and leaves. So the episode ends with Johnny wanting Daniel's cousin to divulge the location of Daniel's house. So I predicted that in the beginning of this episode, Johnny would turn up at Daniel's place. So we will see what happens. As I said previously, the Wacko Prophet podcast typically looks at some good things, some bad things, and some other important things about every single episode. I don't talk about every episode beat by beat, but I do talk about certain plot points when I talk about the good and the bad, and therefore I suggest that you go and watch the episode in its entirety. Watch at least up to episode 9 in season 1 of Cobra Kai before you continue beyond this point. It's alright, and I can wait. Okay, now if you're back, let's get right into it. The good. As we are fast approaching the end of season 1, this episode, Different But Same, has possibly the most extended good thing I've seen in this series, which is a payoff to something that they've been teasing since the beginning of the Cobra Kai series, and is done as well as it could be done. So, the good number 1, the multiple interactions between Johnny and Daniel. Last episode, Molten, ended with Danny's shitty cousin torching Johnny's car with the help of some shady biker characters, and all of them getting their ass kicked by Johnny in return. The cousin was supposedly doing it as payback after the incident where Johnny drunkenly spray painted a dick on one of Daniel's billboards. It makes sense once we find out how much of an actual douche Daniel's cousin is, although they could have done more setup there. But I'm not complaining. It's a good use of an unlikable character, so there's that. Anyway, number 9 does a great job finding an excuse to pair Johnny and Daniel for its entire duration, where they pretty much bond over their shared childhood memories. They find out that they had similar childhoods in their tastes in cars and music, and some other more subtle things as well, such as both of them finding a father figure and solace in karate, and having mums who wanted the best for them and tried everything they can to give it to them. What I appreciate in these interactions is that once Daniel finds out that Johnny didn't exactly have the golden childhood that Daniel thought he had, Daniel is the one who pushes forward to find out more, specifically in that bar scene, where he wants to find out more about Johnny's stepfather and their relationship. Once all the obvious distrust is washed away, and once Daniel actually sees beyond the Cobra Kai veneer, he's the one who chooses to empathize and move forward with that particular line of questioning. It's also hilarious that for all their supposed differences, with Daniel considering himself a well-adjusted adult and Johnny very much being a man-child, they both revel in hating on their ex, which is both cathartic and immature as hell, which is why I love it. It's almost as if Daniel feels like he could relive his childhood and feel young again when he's interacting with Johnny, since the latter is so childish and because of their shared history and rivalry. It's done quite well, and I'm sure long-time fans appreciated these childhood rivals finally finding common ground and realizing the multitude of ways that they can relate to each other. I sure enjoyed it, and even when I was watching those scenes where they were being pally and being friendly, I kind of realized that the show was really showing us the calm before the storm, so to speak. So that doesn't feel contrived though. That feels like it's just at the right time. They wanted us to show, and they wanted Johnny and Daniel to show how similar they really are, but at the same time how different. And so the episode title. Okay, number 2, the good thing. The tying up of loose ends. Number 9 also does some good work in tying up loose ends. 3 loose ends specifically. The first is the payoff with Daniel's cousin and the spray painted dick on Daniel's billboard, which I spoke of earlier. The crescendo of all that is the cousin torching Johnny's car, which lead to pretty much the setup of what happens with Johnny and Daniel in episode 9. We get a full episode's worth of story which did not feel like filler and felt earned through the connection of those two things. The second payoff is one that is set up in the very first episode, which most of the audiences may have forgotten by now. If you remember, Johnny's car is damaged in an accident caused by Sam's former friends, the Mean Girls, which is what led to Johnny's car being taken to LaRusso Auto, which was a great payoff in and of itself. But we and Johnny find out in the same episode that Sam is in fact Daniel's daughter. And that particular bit of information did not come up again in the series, at least was not communicated to anybody else until that is now. And it happens in a very obvious way, with Johnny finally meeting and talking to Daniel and his wife, and is trading verbal blows with the former when it slips out of his mouth. This little bit of revelation leads Daniel's wife to ground Sam, which contributes to her and Miguel's part of the story, which is, as I said previously, some well done and natural payoff to a pretty good setup scene. I'm happy the writers and creators waited this long to have it come up in the most natural way, without using it for unnecessary drama earlier in the season. We're almost at the end here, so it feels appropriate that it comes up now. Had they waited until season 2, I don't think anybody, including myself, would have remembered or cared. So well done with that. The third payoff, of course, is the one that has Daniel, Johnny, and Robbie meeting in the same place, with Robbie being the unfortunate catalyst that stokes the antagonism between Daniel and Johnny once more. The ending, as I said previously, is pretty upsetting, because Daniel and Johnny seem to be getting along quite well for the whole episode. But that really was the calm before the storm, and I don't look forward to seeing what shape that storm will take in episode 10, the finale. The good thing number 3, Aisha's ascent and possible descent. Aisha, and if you remember who Aisha is, she is the second student to join Cobra Kai, who was Sam's former friend and who was bullied by Sam's friends, the Mean Girls. Aisha gets a bit of a triumphant moment here, which is undercut by how it plays out, which is why I'm calling this thing Aisha's ascent and possible descent, depending on how you look at it. I'm calling it an ascent and a possible descent because while it does give some payback to her bully, the mean girl Regina George character, I still don't remember her name and I don't really care, by essentially Aisha giving her a wedgie in front of a bunch of people at a party. And it feels good to see Aisha get some revenge there, but the way it's shown, it's just that she's another bully. She's surrounded by her own crowd, the Cobra Kai, and she is no doubt the bully in that particular scene. But to be completely fair to her, I have no doubt that it feels good to embarrass your bully in the way that they have embarrassed you for, I have no doubt, several years. It also seems like Aisha's aiming her anger and her spite at people who deserve it. And even then she only does so when provoked. So there's that. She may not be friends with Sam, but we never see her picking a fight with Sam or antagonizing her. And she even gives advice about Sam to Miguel in a previous episode. So it's not like she's just willy-nilly bullying everyone she sees. She aims her anger at people who she feels deserve it and who are pretty much asking for it. So maybe Aisha is turning into a bully, but as of now, it seems to be a bit more nuanced and aimed. But is making her a bit more of a vindictive character, thanks in large part, I suppose, to Cobra Kai and the influence that Johnny has on her. Which is more than what I can say for Hawk, who is only used for comedic purposes, but seems to be going towards being a genuine, somewhat disturbing bully. I hope they follow through with his storyline without making him only comic relief, I should say. He does seem to be a kid who has not had power for most of his life, and now that he has it, doesn't seem to know what to do with it, and certainly does not have any control. So those are the 3 good things that I have noticed about episode number 9, different but same. Let's get to the bad. The bad. And quite frankly, I have only one bad to talk about, and it's about Miguel's behavior in this episode, specifically at the party by the end of the episode. So yeah, Miguel's behavior. It's not that I don't get it. The setup for it was done over the last couple of episodes. The LaRussos and Johnny poison Sam and Miguel's minds respectively in Malton, with their subjective stories about what happened all those years ago in Karate Kid 1, basically. That certainly puts a little dent in the relationship of Miguel and Samantha. It leads to Sam not wanting Miguel to meet her father, although she didn't outright come out and say it. And Miguel certainly sees that and possibly misunderstands as to why. By the end of Malton, as I said in the recap, Miguel goes by himself to the LaRusso household to try and talk to Daniel, which is a very Miguel thing to do. But then, as I also mentioned in the previous episode, he then sees Sam and the family hang out with this other dude who happens to be Robbie. And if you remember, I thought it was done badly, but at the sight of that, Miguel decides to turn and leave. But the point still stands. That has been set up already. This is further compounded by the events of this episode. The tying up of the loose ends of the hit and run on episode 1 ends up with Sam being grounded, meaning there's no contact between her and Miguel for most of the episode, and he thinks that she's ignoring him. When she finally does turn up, it's with the same guy Miguel saw her with, and Miguel is pretty much drunk by that point because she turns up at the party. Now, all that said, I am not condoning Miguel's behavior. I'm not excusing him for how he behaved towards Sam and the conclusion of that little scene. He was being an absolute shite, and even though we're shown that he had reason to be, maybe, that doesn't excuse him. The reason that I'm putting this as a bad, the only bad of the episode, is not the fact that he behaved like that. I'm just saying that not enough housekeeping or background work was done by the show to lead to this behavior making sense. It just feels like the show doing what needs to be done to present a bad guy within quotation marks to the finale. It's kind of like if you ever watch pro wrestling, it's kind of like a heel turn in wrestling, where we have so much invested in a face or a good character in pro wrestling, and suddenly they up and betray us and turns into a baddie. And we feel really betrayed because we really like that character. It's kind of like that, but not done quite well. And when your writing is not up to pro wrestling standards, then there's something wrong. We were, or maybe I was, led to believe that Miguel was more mature than that, because we are shown constant examples of how he is the mature voice in Johnny's head most of the time. He's the reason that Cobra Kai is as successful as it is now, and he's the reason that Johnny has been making good decisions and has been gradually improving as a character. Because in all episodes leading up to this, Miguel is very level-headed and very mature. And I get what the show wants to do. They want us to give a shit about Miguel and everyone else. And we do. So that's quite well done. They want us to give a shit about Miguel while also showing that he is being corrupted, or that Cobra Kai in general is having, or the outlook of Cobra Kai, I suppose, is having a bad influence on him. The issue is that they, like I said, did not do enough build-up for that change to make sense. I'm going to make a bit of a prediction now. I predict that the finale will see Miguel going up against Robbie. Miguel is obviously gonna represent Cobra Kai, and maybe Robbie will represent Miyagi-Do. I don't see how that's going to happen given how episode 9 ended, but I have a feeling that it may turn out to be that, because it all leads up to everything that has been happening so far, leads up to the end or the finale being a karate tournament. So what I mean is, just to twist the knife a little, the writers are going to pit two likable characters against each other with their own motivations. This is great, a good way to keep us invested. But again, I still think this little heel turn is bad because it was not telegraphed effectively. Miguel was an all-around good guy right up until the moment where he was not. I want to follow this through and believe it. I want to really keep being invested in Miguel's storyline, but right now, 9 episodes down, it just seems rushed and not earned. I don't know what they can do in one episode to make Miguel not bad, but make Miguel the antagonistic character. I don't know what they can do because each episode is about 30 minutes or less. But I hope they do something in episode 10 to make it justifiable. And to be quite honest, I don't know if they can. So we will see though. We will see. I'll see this through to the end. One more episode to go and it'll be done with Cobra Kai Season 1. I may go for Cobra Kai Season 2 as well, or I may not, depending on how the ending turns up. But we'll see. As of right now, I'm not too happy with that little turn. So yes, that is the bad of the episode. Now, before we conclude, let's talk about some important stuff that happened in the episode as well. Number 1, Johnny's interaction with Daniel's son. Where Johnny turns up at the LaRusso house and pretty much tries to pick a fight with Daniel is priceless, because it shows that both of them, despite their difference in ages, is mentally the same age. Number 2, Daniel's wife's exasperation. I predicted that this would happen. I predicted that that at least Johnny would try to pick a fight with Daniel, and that Daniel would also get into the mood because, as I said previously, Daniel seems to be getting in touch with his young, juvenile, irresponsible side the more he gets involved with Cobra Kai. But she will be the adult. I said that, and she was. She was the voice of reason pretty much in episode 9, which is really fun to see. And the third important thing, there's a little bit of a cameo, I suppose, by Kyler in this episode. Remember Kyler the douche, Sam's original, very temporary boyfriend who got his ass kicked by Miguel? It was very satisfying to see Kyler turn up at the party, see Miguel and then immediately peace out and bail. So that was a very good bit of character continuity, showing him to be truly a coward, as all bullies most definitely are. So yeah, that is the end of episode 9. So once again, I know I'm repeating myself, but I am not too happy with where the season is as of now. I have a bit of I'm a bit worried about how episode 10, the finale, will turn out. So I'll have a bit of a. So I'll obviously talk about it in the next week and I'll finish it off. I don't know how it looks like. I also have a bit of a prediction that they may follow through with Miguel being the antagonist, the pessimistic, the angry character, because I know that season 2 is already there. So Cobra Kai may fall victim to something that a lot of series fall victim to, where they are more interested in setting up season 2 than they are in satisfyingly finishing season 1. It happens to a lot of TV series, which is why I stay away from most of them. But we'll see what happens. I'm really looking forward to it either way, whether it be a good or a bad turn for Cobra Kai. It may be bad. I'm going to predict that it's going to be bad because, as I have mentioned in previous episodes, I was expecting Kreese to turn up in the season. He did not. Kreese being Johnny's sensei back in the original Cobra Kai. He did not turn up, and he is dead, according to Johnny at least. So he did not turn up. He might turn up and not be dead in episode 10, but I doubt they'll do it. I don't think they'll use such a divisive character, at least in the story, a divisive character just in one episode. Or if they do it, it'll be very difficult to make it effective. So I'm going to predict that Kreese in some form will turn up in season 2, which is why I feel like episode 10, the finale of season 1, might be more about setting up season 2 than it is about giving a good ending to season 1. I hope I'm wrong. I doubt that I am. So we'll see how it works. Well, that has been it for the Wacko Prophet podcast. As to what I've been watching, I am almost ready to watch Mandalorian Season 2, which started last week. And I'm really looking forward to seeing that. I was a big fan of Mandalorian Season 1 and how it was done. I may talk about that much later as well. What I'm going to do is, I've already decided, once I'm done with Cobra Kai Season 1, I'm going to talk about movies. And I may stick to the format that I'm doing now, where I talk about the good, the bad, and some important stuff. Or depending on the movie, I might just go into a more conventional review pattern as well. So we'll see. It all depends on what movie I'm watching. If you do want to follow my work and check on what I'm doing, and if you're interested in hearing my terrible voice, you are absolutely welcome to follow me in any of my social media. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and also I have a YouTube channel. I'll leave the links to all of those in the description of this podcast. If you do have any feedback for me with regard to my review of this, and also my review of The Haunting of Bly Manor, in which I covered the entire season in one approximately 40-minute episode, please do listen to it, and please do leave me your feedback. Any feedback is welcome at this point. So thank you very much for sticking with me. We're almost at the end there. So see you next week at the finale of Cobra Kai Season 1. This has been the Wacko Prophet podcast. I am the Wacko Prophet and my name is Imran. You have yourself a great week.